I guess we're gonna get going here. Um, I guess I'd first like to thank, on behalf of the steering committee, the Richard Kemp Center, everyone who has provided food and helped set up this space for tonight. Um, I'm just gonna have Mark just wanted to say a few words welcoming us all to the Richard Kemp Center, so I'll just hand it to him for a few. Nice timing.
Thank you. You know it's not possible for me to only say a few words. So first of all, I just want to, on behalf of Christine Longmore, who is my wife, the director of the Richard Kim Center, I want to welcome you to this space. This is your house. So for those of you who are here, I just want to let you know that this is a thing. We've been here since 2021, December 2021. You may remember that just a couple months before that, the old man passed over in Birchwood, Richard Kemp, my father-in-law. And we hadn't planned on naming this place after him, but we ended up doing it after that. And this is a product, an offshoot of the work of the Vermont Racial Justice Alliance, the work that we do towards eradicating systemic racism. And also in doing that work, it's policy, community engagement and support, outreach and education, and cultural empowerment, all data-driven. And it just made sense that this place should be here. So you are welcome. Please make yourself comfortable. There will be, I think, some updates that we can get out to you. Opt out if you don't want us to send you any email because I've already compromised your contact information. So just let Jess know if you don't want anything from the Richard Kim Center, and we won't. I know it seems kind of aggressive, but I figured most of you would want to. I just want to shout out Alexander Ferguson, who's here in the house, right here, sitting right in front of you, who's the president of the board of the Richard Kim Center, and also a resident of Ward 2. So just please give it up for him for being here and present. I just want you to keep your eye on him because he's going to try to slip out later. So again, welcome, 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 welcome. I'm going to go over to CHT's little shingding, and I'm going to come back and hang out with you later. Thank you.
Thanks again. So I guess now we'll open up the floor to public forum. 2 minutes to anyone who'd like to say anything.
Hi, everyone. Hello, can you hear me? I think so. Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren. I'm on the steering committee, but I'm also on the board for the registration of voters. And there's an election coming up, if you haven't heard. Ballots are being mailed out this week, starting yesterday. I actually saw one in the mail today at my house. So if you don't receive your ballot by next week, let the clerk's office know. And early voting begins now, so be sure to vote. And as a reminder, Ward 2, we will be in the Old North End Community Center for town meeting day for voting. If you go in person, it will be the last time we are there while IAA finishes up construction. And if you have any questions about the election or anything like that, please let me know. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cindy. I'm actually living in Ward 7, but we just want to make the announcement that if you've not been down to the Sea Caves this year, you really need to get down there. It is a pretty magical spot that's maintained by our conservation team, and take the path all the way straight down. You don't have to have skates. You could just walk across the ice and check out the Sea Caves, but if you do have skates, it's just a really lovely skating path. So get out into the Sea Caves, pretty magical experience right in Burlington Park, right across the street from the high school. And it's a walk down the hill, so leave energy to get back up to the top of that road.
So I just wanted to say, one night years ago, I was riding the subway in New York City, and I saw this quote spray painted on the wall. It said, "Soon the poor will have nothing left to eat but the rich." And I just wanted to say, we know this neighborhood is one of the most diverse in the state. We've continued to see this lack of concern and action from local leaders that provides access to resources and funding that could support our neighborhood. An example of this is the current situation at Integrated Arts Academy, which sits empty while our youth's only option was to be displaced to St. Mark's Church. This decision lacked cultural awareness, understanding for the families and many faiths of this neighborhood. The same youth that we hear such concern for when it comes to being at risk or talking about public safety. So I want to know, whose safety are we really concerned about? Is it the youth that one day will be inheriting this mess that we leave for them? The Old North End is a blueprint for many other cities and towns that squeeze black and brown folks, lower income folks into one area. People are dying from the lack of affordable and accessible housing. People are dying from the lack of compassion and connection. Basic needs aren't being met, and yet we continue to see this development of downtown, the South End. The squeeze is getting tighter around our necks, and the cost of living exceeds the ability to breathe. So I just want to know what steps are being taken to prioritize the safety and well-being of those impacted by this oppression. That's me.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just want to thank everyone for coming out to the Richard Kim Center. I guess this is just a plug for the Richard Kim Center. So for community activities and community outreach engagements just like this and others, just wanted to highlight some things from last year. We had a really small but very effective summer activities program for a few of the youths that live alongside Riverside here. Some of the family outreach engagement activities that we did to accommodate families during summertime. We tried to specifically do our fundraising for, if you haven't heard, for the Sankofa trip to Washington, D.C., to the National African American Museum of the National Museum of African American History and Culture. We had a great time. I am hopeful too with the utilization of some of the equipment that we got from CCTV. Big thanks to CCTV to be able to capture some of this, the experiences, and to relay them back. Also here at the Richard Kim Center, as far as the doors are open weekly, and we have the resources here. We share resources that are presented here, flyers, other activities that are going on in the community. So we do invite anyone who wants to relay information. You can drop off some flyers here. If you want to be in, as Mark said, in the know of what's going on here, you can join the mailing list. And also there is the utilization of music as a wellness tool. So this cubicle space here is just kind of tucked off for the accessibility of the center area here, but we do have some jam sessions that we're having at least once a month and a little bit more as we get connected with more activities. Big shout out to you again, Alex, for doing a quick connection to doing a pop-up meet and greet between an artist, Medicine, that was performing at Nectar's, and that was a great way to say, hey, come through, check out the community that's here. A lot of the artists that perform in Burlington, they just come through, they get the vibes, right? The community comes out and supports, but they don't really know about the community that's here, especially the diverse community that's bridged between the Old North End and Winooski. So the activity that we did, that pop-up meet and greet, that was very effective. We plan to do a good amount of that too, so feel free to be looking out for some flyers about that as well. So jam session here, music is a great wellness tool. The space is an open door, come through, have conversations, and be a part of either future plannings and collaborations. So that was just a plug for the Richard Kemp Center and what's known as the Jano, a really unique name. I can get into it, into more interpersonal connections, but Jano is the name of the music jam session that's here, featured here at the Richard Kemp Center. So thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Jess Hyman, Ward 2 resident, North Champlain Street. I want to draw your attention to the hearts on the table. Tomorrow's Valentine's Day. There's a lot of hate in the world, there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of injustice, but there's also a lot of love. So the hearts and pens are there. I invite everyone to just write something you love about the neighborhood, about the Old North End, about the Ward 2 NPA, about your community, and leave them on the table, and we'll share them publicly as well. I also want to remind folks there's a ton of snacks. We don't have dinner tonight, but this is pretty much the equivalent of dinner. Really delicious food that was made by our amazing volunteers. Mascoma Bank supported us this month with a sponsorship so that we could purchase some sambusas from Hajia Nuria Ibrahim, who also caters. Her phone number's on the sign, and from CK Dumpling House on North Street. So really delicious food. Don't be shy. You can walk up during the meeting and help yourself. We'll also be preparing some to-go containers because I think we'll have extra food. And so I would invite you to make a donation, take a container home. One last thing I wanted to mention, wearing my work hat. So I work at CVOEO, the Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity, and tax time is coming up. And CVOEO has a free tax service. The VITA tax program will do your taxes for free as long as you're income eligible. And so you can go to the CVOEO website and look that up, and you can make an appointment and meet with someone at the mall in South Burlington to do your taxes. Thank you.
All right, this one, we did, the steering committee to get an email from Andres Oyega, who wanted to pass along an invitation from the Climate Action Collective for the Burlington Climate Candidate Forum on February 25th at 6:30 at the Ira Allen Chapel. If anyone's interested, feel free to reach out to the steering committee. We can pass along the information. And so now we'll get started. Right? Yeah. Okay. So I guess we have, we'll be talking about bond votes, and is Megan? Oh, great. Perfect. Okay, and then the mayor is online as well. Okay. So I'll open the floor to them.
Great. Can you all hear me? Was I so loud? You can hear me. I can only see the facilitator. There's Ashley. Ashley, can you hear me? I can't hear you. Can you?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. I can hear you. You're good.
Can you hear me or no?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, excellent. Okay, this sounds like a comedy act that we're starting here. This is great. Well, all I can see is Ashley, but I know the room is full, which is such a great thing for the Richard Kemp Center. I don't know if people have been there before, but it's a great, wonderful part of the Old North End. And I'm so appreciative of them being able to host the NPA for Wards 2 so that y'all can still meet in person. Oh, there are the people. Thank you, camera person. So hi, neighbors. I just wanted to, sorry I couldn't be there in person. We have a sick kiddo at home. And so I'm doing a quick intro to this agenda item to kick off our bond discussion with all of you as we get closer to town meeting day. I'm going to give a little bit of an overview and then hand it off to our subject experts, Ashley and Megan, who will go into more detail around the 3 bonds that you'll find on your ballot. And I don't know if you all are on the same mail system that we are over here on Front Street, but ballots arrived today, at least at our house. And I want to encourage people to keep an eye out for the ballots themselves. I'm not sure if anyone's giving a quick ballot and voting PSA, but what I'll do just very briefly is to remind you that we do have all mailed ballots, meaning that if you're on our registration forms, registration list, you should be getting a ballot mailed right to you. If you don't receive one, though, I would say in the next week or so, please be in touch with our clerk treasurer's office. We can mail you a new one. And we can also, of course, always give you a ballot at the voting locations in your neighborhood. And so, as I think Lauren mentioned, at IAA is under renovation. And so one last time, you'll be at the Old North End Community Center to vote. It is also all resident voting in the city of Burlington for all local matters. So all the topics that are on your agenda tonight will be matters that everyone can vote on, regardless of your citizenship status. And that is for folks who are here full-time and have legal status. You can register same day, regardless of whether you're a citizen or non-citizen. You can go to City Hall, same day, meaning on election day at the polls, or vote, or go to City Hall to register and vote for that matter in person. So to kick off our bond conversation, I just want to make sure folks have the context of why we are bringing these 3 bond questions to voters. Ashley will speak more to the GO bond, the general obligation bond, and then Megan will speak to the lake and water bonds. But what these 3 bonds collectively represent is an opportunity for us to invest in our city, to acknowledge and address the fact that we've had a lot of significant deferred maintenance on so many aspects of what makes our city able to operate. This ranges from things that the GO bond, which funds our capital project, covers, related to our buildings. We have 19 buildings. It relates to our fleet, which are the vehicles, the major vehicles that we have to operate and support this city. It ranges to street and sidewalk repair, which, as someone who's lived in the Old North End for 20 plus years, when a lot of our folks in our neighborhood walk, you can see every day around the need for investment in our streets and sidewalk for ease of passage, but also for folks who have accessibility issues, et cetera. It's very much needed, and we have struggled to keep up with the everyday maintenance needed for many aspects of what makes our city run. When you hear more about the lake and water bonds, you'll hear about the deferred maintenance and critical infrastructure investments we need for our wastewater treatment system, which includes primarily our main plant down on the waterfront, but also our drinking water system and our stormwater systems. And so I want you to really think about and ask the questions you need to ask around how this helps to benefit our city. But this is, again, an investment in our future. It's our ability to make sure our community is still able to thrive, and that we have this vibrancy and really address our current and future needs as a city. These are really critical and strategic investments, and we are really committed to making sure that these bonds are coming forward with a real commitment to affordability, which is so critical. And so Ashley will talk about the tax impact of the GO bond, the general obligation bond, and Megan will speak a little bit to the affordability programs that already exist and we're looking to strengthen related to the lake and water bonds, because those bonds are paid back by water ratepayers, so on the water bill. This is also a really important fiscal responsibility moment, because the longer we defer maintenance, the more expensive things become. And also, the more we defer maintenance, the harder it is to hold on to critical assets in our city. And unfortunately, Memorial Auditorium sits there as a daily reminder of when the city does not do a good job stewarding our resources. And then buildings come offline, they become part of our urban blight, and it becomes almost impossible to bring these ever back online when we do not do our due diligence of investing in our resources. So I'll wrap up by saying that these three bonds are also pretty critical to advance the three major priorities we have as a city right now, which is to make sure we have a comprehensive and effective community safety system. We need the vehicles, we need the facilities to actually have an effective community safety system. And so these GO bond dollars are going to help, and you'll hear Ashley go into this, public safety vehicles like fire trucks. They will support upgrades to our fire and police stations. They will make sure that we can have snowplows that are functioning to clear streets in times of emergency so folks can get around, including those first responders. Our second priority is related to housing, making sure we have enough ample and affordable housing at that, and that we're making sure those units are being built and brought online. When Megan talks about the wastewater bond, which is called the lake bond, you'll hear how it is going to be very critical that we build our capacity for our main plant to be able to support and hook up more housing units to be built in the city of Burlington. We're very much close to our capacity right now, and we will not be able to achieve this goal of more critical housing without understanding what's underground and needed in order to support that housing to be built. And then finally, the third priority being climate, and not only doing our part, but continuing to innovate and having a positive impact on our resources for which we steward. And that, of course, includes the lake's health. And you'll hear, again, Megan speak to the lake bond and the impacts that will have on our ability to treat what we put into the lake through our wastewater stormwater system, which are very critical as we continue to see summers where beaches have to be closed, and making sure we're doing our part for the health of the lake, knowing that many other water sources from the Winooski River, et cetera, also feed into this lake. So we have two really brilliant subject matter experts there who will go into some more details. I encourage you to get out and vote, reach out with more questions. We have a lot more website information on our website under our elections tab, and reach out to the mayor's office anytime if you have more questions. And with that, I will pass it to Ashley. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. All right. Thank you all for having me tonight. My name is Ashley Parker. I am the City Capital Program Director. I am in the Clerk's Treasurer's Office, and I'm here to talk about the $20 million general obligation bond. You can go to the next one. Tonight I'll just be going through, I like to give a little overview of what the General Fund Capital Program is, and then we'll go into what is the need, what is the tax impact, and then we'll just wrap up. So on the next slide, you'll see, so really a capital project is anything that involves major construction, major replacement of a significant capital asset in the city. And so in the city, we mostly focus in my program in the general fund side, projects that involve our streets, our sidewalks, our bridges, our parks, our facilities, and our fleet. Well, I think I said fleet, but it's really important. So those are the capital asset classes that the general fund program covers. It doesn't cover anything on the school side, doesn't cover anything on the water side, it doesn't cover anything on the BED side or the airport side. So those are the things that this program tries to fund. What it will not fund are things like annual routine maintenance. So these are truly things that are critical infrastructure needs. There's nothing in my capital plan that would be supported by this bond that is a Band-Aid type situation or a simple replacement or new thing. We're really focusing on our critical infrastructure. Next slide, please. Actually, you can go 2. That's okay.
Can I interrupt just for a second? So if anybody needs to interrupt Ashley at any time, this is the only other microphone. So wave at me that you want to interrupt her.
It's fine. We'll
Okay.
make it work. All right, so why do we need this bond? Why is this important for the city at this point in time? So the General Fund Capital Program, our only current available revenue source is $2 million that we are able to bond for annually per the city charter. That is the only guaranteed revenue source that this program has. There are a handful of dedicated taxes that go to very specific items as referenced by resolution, ordinances, the charters. But other than that, the $2 million is all that we have to apply to any capital asset need that the general fund program has. So what this means is I will go through all the numbers and all the things that we need to do, but it limits our ability to leverage dollars so they can be spread out further and really hit our targets for deferred levels of maintenance. The table that I've shared with you here is really important because what we're trying to show you is that if this bond were to pass, we would not be taking out $20 million in fiscal year 26. We would be spreading this bond over the next 3 years to really help us put more dollars towards the General Fund Capital Program in addition to the $2 million. So it would give us more dollars to spread across all of our need, across all of our assets. And as I think a lot of people know, I think everybody's still struggling with the effects of inflation on both non-construction costs and construction costs. So that continues to be a driver in the cost of the capital plan every year. On the next slides, we'll go through our assets and what is our need. And on this first slide, the fleet is at the top of my mind because our general fund fleet, we have over 200 general fund vehicles that many are at or past their service life. And so we've been deferring a lot of our vehicle replacement due to lack of resources to replace them in a timely fashion. This includes our fire trucks and our ambulances, our snow plows, our sidewalk tractors, police cruisers. I mean, those are the vehicles that provide service every day to this community. And so this bond would look to we have about a $3 million need to replace our more critical fleet assets like our fire trucks and our ambulances, and that would be the goal of this bond, is to replace those that are well past their service life in those categories. Next up is our sidewalks. So we have about 133 miles of sidewalk across the city, and we have goals of replacing about 3 miles of sidewalk a year. It costs about $1 million a mile to replace a sidewalk. So right now the goal is to try to bring in $3 million a year to replace roughly 3 miles of sidewalk. So this bond would go a long way towards supplying some funds to help supplement other sources of funding the city might be able to put into the sidewalk program. We have 17.2 miles that we know are in poor, serious conditions. So this bond would go a long way to helping us tackle a lot of this deferred maintenance of our sidewalk infrastructure. You can stay on this slide. Next up is our streets. Our streets also, we know we have a lot of deferred needs in our city streets. We have 88 miles of streets that we own and maintain, and about 10 miles of those are in unacceptable condition. So we know that it costs about $1.2 million a mile, which is a little bit more than to replace a sidewalk. But so we're looking to really try to aim for 4 miles of replacement every year, which means we need about $4.8 million to try to hit that goal every year. So this bond will go a long way to, again, providing us the supplemental revenues that we can put into our street infrastructure so we can try to do better at replacing our streets. Another big topic is our transportation safety program. This is a really important program from the city. These guys do a lot of really great projects. In the transportation safety category, I have captured our bridges and our traffic calming type infrastructure that you are probably familiar with across the city. So right now in the capital plan, I have 3 bridges that hit my list. One of those is the Winooski Bridge project. So this bond, its main focus is really the local match requirement that the city has to try to make sure that this bridge project happens. Between now and fiscal year 28, we have about a $4 million need to be able to provide our match towards making that project successful. VTrans is the lead. We're partnering with Winooski. This is a major transportation thoroughfare. It's a bridge that needs to be replaced. So this will be a big piece of this bond. In addition, we know that about $300,000 will help us replace or implement about 14 traffic safety, traffic calming type projects, whether they're temporary or permanent, across the city. And so it's really important to be able to give some more money back into this program so we can do more of those types of projects to make our streets and sidewalks safer for pedestrians and all users of our transportation network. All right. And then the 2 final asset classes, which are just as important as all of these others. We have, as the mayor said, 19 city buildings that we own and are responsible for. That includes City Hall, it includes BCA, it includes 5 fire stations, a police station. We have so many needs across all of these buildings. I think the last number I saw was about $15 million across all of these buildings. So the goal of this bond is to, again, continue providing a source of funding so that we can do the work that we need to do in our buildings and continue to make them usable for both our staff, including our first responders, and the public who needs to come and get services from the city. So a lot of the projects that the mayor named, we've got a lot of work to do at 1 North Ave. We have a lot of work to do at the Central Fire Station. And even at City Hall, we have some HVAC things that we need to take care of. Otherwise, that building will not be as usable for the future. So this bond will really put a lot of investment into those buildings. And then last but not least, parks. we have a lot of parks. We have 37 parks, and all of those parks have deferred maintenance needs as well. That actually is probably up in the $27 million range. This bond would help us tackle a lot of things happening along the waterfront. We have issues at our marinas and waterfront park, and really all over the place. I think so. This bond would really help us hit, even just $700,000 would help us try to tackle, at least maybe three different projects at any city park. So we have a lot of needs across our parks to make sure that they're accessible, usable by all of our members of our community. All right, the next slide. So we put this table together to try to demonstrate what you might see if we were to be able to go out and get this bond, how we would allocate dollars across different asset classes. And this is just a percentage-based approach at this point. None of these projects have been guaranteed any funding, but this is what it could look like. So we just wanted to give you a sense of that. And obviously the capital plan is it's a plan that really evolves a lot, and then we have to be really flexible with it sometimes because there's often an urgent need that comes up throughout the year where we might have to divert resources that we were not expecting to. So, and we also want to make sure that we're having equitable implementation of projects across the city. So that's another reason why we wanted to give you like a range of possibility here about what these allocations might look like.
What percentage, do you have an estimated percentage of like this that would go towards Old North End specifically, like this, our neighborhood board too?
I don't have that specific thing, but
Like in terms of like, just see like sidewalk, streets.
yeah,
Is most of this looking at downtown?
no.
Okay.
What I think might help answer your question, and it's not going to 100%, but on the next slide, so one of the really, really neat things that we put together that is new for the city is a capital planning map where you can go on, it's interactive online, and you can go and you can zoom in on your neighborhood, your ward, your street, and you can see all of the things that the city has already identified as what we know is a capital need over the next 5 years. So this is a new tool that you can go and check out. I'm hoping this is going to become a long-term planning tool for the city where we can go add more layers, show more overlaps of projects that touch each other, so maybe we can do, do 2 projects and maybe save a little bit of money. Or, you know, one of the things that's on this page, if you go check it out, there's a community survey. And we're asking people to take this survey, tell us what you see that needs to be done that might not be on the map. And we're working to put together a data layer, a community feedback data layer, where we can overlay it on this map. So we're also getting, you know, we're showing your input in real time on top of these other things that we know we need. So hoping to just really get a better sense of like where all of our projects are, how we're distributing our funds, and what else needs to be done that we're not seeing. So this is one way for you to have, you know, a say in what's going on or keeping an eye on what's going on. This will change as we go through time and as projects, you know, come and go. I'm hoping this will be continued to be updated. This will stay online. I'm not sure where it's going to live yet, but the goal is to keep this up well past town meeting day, as well as like the survey. The survey might change slightly just to focus on projects that you want to see added to the map, for example. But I want this to be a living thing where we can continue to use it and maybe improve how we're doing projects and prioritizing our projects across the city. So I highly encourage you to check this out if you haven't. It's actually pretty cool, and we haven't had this before, so please check it out and let us know what you think. I think that's all I was going to say about that one, so that's good. You can go to the next one. All right, so what is the tax impact? So affordability is really important to, I think, everybody in this room. We've worked really hard to make sure that we've identified the projects that we feel are most critical, that we know we need to do now. As I think I said before, none of these are Band-Aid type projects. These are real fixes. These are things that will have a real impact on everybody's day-to-day. We also have been working really hard on efficiency, making sure that in our FY26 budget process that we're really taking a look at how to bring operations and maintenance to the forefront so that we know that we're budgeting to take care of our infrastructure and our assets rather than just waiting for them to break or fall apart. So we're really putting some steps in place now to make this more sustainable in the long term. In addition, we'll continue to work as much as we can to leverage any bond funds to bring in more money. You know, the last bond we were really successful. I believe it was about $5 million that we were able to leverage to bring in $7 million worth of grants. So that was really helpful in making a lot of different projects happen. So we'll continue to try to see what we can do to continue to leverage and bring in other revenue sources so it's not just all on this bond. And as the mayor said, waiting won't make it go away and it will not make it less expensive. So doing things now is really important. You know, a lot of folks ask about our debt policy and how does this bond fit within that. The city reviews its debt policy every year to make sure we know where we're at. Our team in the CT office has done that, and we found that due to growth in the grant list and quicker payments on our existing debt, both principal and interest, have helped create a gap where we feel comfortable with this $20 million ask. So that's really why we are moving forward with this at this time. And on the tax bills, yeah, you can go to the next one. So as I said before, the $20 million general obligation bond would be drawn out over 3 years. So that does have a different kind of an impact on your taxes. And right now we're projecting and I'm sorry I don't have the updated slide here, but we are projecting about $139 a year for an increase on your tax bill if you have a house of $500,000, or that's $12 a month. So that would be the maximum impact that somebody will see. And in fact, this could actually go down over a payback period of 20 years. So yeah, that's, you know, feel free to reach out with other questions. I do have another table that I can share too if you're curious about the annual rates. And my last slide is just next steps, and this one's also outdated, but really we highly encourage you all to check out our elections page. There, you'll be able to get to the BTV Thrives webpage from there, and you'll find the map, you'll find all the information on the bond. This one needs 2/3 vote to pass, so if you have any questions, feel free to connect with me or anybody else. You know, Cindy's here, and we've got Corey in the back, so a couple other folks who are engaged in different capacities with the capital program. And again, just a reminder, no project is automatically funded via this bond at this time. We'll be working through our channels. We have a capital committee that reviews things. We'll have to follow purchasing policy. So there's a lot of guardrails in place to help make sure that we make good choices for the community. So thank you so much for your time.
So sidewalks, how many miles per year are you currently doing without this bond?
I believe we're at about a mile, maybe a little bit more.
And you're with this bond, you want to include 17 new miles or just 3?
The goal would be to do 3 miles a year to try to keep ratcheting down on the 17-mile goal. There's no way it couldn't do $17 million of sidewalk replacement with this one, I don't think. So we're trying to spread across all our assets and do what we can. We also leverage the street capital tax to do a lot of our streets and sidewalk work. So it wouldn't be just this bond alone. And one of the things I'd like to do with the capital planning map tool is to find those places where, again, you've got street, sidewalk, or underground infrastructure work where everything's happening in one place, and maybe we can do some of those projects at the same time, leveraging different kinds of resources. So that's one of the goals that I have with the capital planning map, too.
And do you know how long they last? Let's just say the average mile.
Oh, Corey, is it like 30, 40 years? It's around there. Yeah.
Like we have 400 miles of sidewalk, I'm sure.
No, it's 133.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is a lot.
Thank you for that. I'll step over here. Oh, over here. I'm getting directions. Got tons of questions. Maybe I don't know if they're appropriate for you or what, but one question is, you mentioned it's about $1 million for a sidewalk and $1.2 million for a road. I was kind of wondering, the road's a lot wider than a sidewalk. Why is that difference between the two not larger?
Yeah, I work for the city. So Corey Mims, Senior Public Works Engineer with the City of Burlington. Oh, sorry. Yep. So generally speaking, sidewalk is a much smaller activity. Obviously, it takes a lot more manpower to focus on an area where you're doing very precise work. Paving is a little bit of a larger operation. You have a milling machine. You have larger pieces of equipment to proceed with doing the work, and so you can get a lot more done in a shorter amount of time. It's a lot. If you're just straight paving, it's significantly easier, but streets also requires, with other complete streets, to also do sidewalks and curbs and ADA ramps, and so that kind of plays into why the cost is higher. If we just straight paved and we did not have to do complete streets, which we all know is what cities need. They need to have accessibility for all, and so it's not just vehicles, it's also bicyclists and everybody else. And so just blacktop would be significantly less than 1.2 million a year, or per million per mile. But with the sidewalks and other work, it gets up. So it's a little bit more than the sidewalks alone, but it's balancing of both the paving as well as the concrete work.
And then the other thought I had, you talked about a lot of different vehicles that we need to upgrade, and it might be a stressful time to think about that through, but I'm kind of wondering, do we have the ability to think about and say, can we get vehicles that are more efficient? Can we get like fire trucks and whatnot? I know we've had issues with smaller roads in our community losing parking or having to build them out, or not being able to construct traffic calming because we need to make way for large fire trucks. Is there a way to think about, as we get new service vehicles, can we right size them or size them the best that we can and all that jazz?
Yeah, no, those are great questions. And yes, I know that the fleet team is thinking about those things. Right now, what I have heard in talking about the EV options for especially the larger fleet, there's not a lot of comfort with moving towards like the fire trucks or the ambulances, things like that. We've moved towards EV and smaller vehicles, lighter weight vehicles, lighter duty vehicles. We do have some trucks that, not large trucks, but some trucks that are energy electric. But that's always on the table. We're always looking to see, are there ways to buy an ambulance where you're buying like a used body, but then you're buying a chassis to add on to the body, which is cheaper than buying like a brand new ambulance. So there are things like that that we look at. Depends on the vehicles too and where they are getting them, and whether we feel comfortable or confident that those vehicles will give us a service life that that makes sense for the need. But those are definitely things that we're definitely thinking about.
Thank you. Smila Grant, City Councilor, Central District. I obsess over fleet. I know I talk a lot about community safety issues and equity issues, but I obsess over fleet. I've had a lot of conversations with Chief LaChance of the fire department about this. I really trust him in terms of making the decisions that he is for the fire department. So one of the things they did when they developed the community response team to respond to overdoses was to have a smaller vehicle. So they weren't constantly taking out the larger trucks. They realized, like, we don't need to be doing this. So that was an innovation that ultimately, in terms of putting the extra pressure on the larger vehicles, the wear and tear, they've helped eliminate a lot of that. The pricing of vehicles is going up exponentially. And the way the market works is, like, you can order a vehicle now, but you don't get it for 3 or 4 years. And you don't have to pay for it for 3 or 4 years. But the way the economics of everything works is you have to place the order now. And you have to have the commitment and the contract for it in order for it to be built to you. But you lock in the price, and it has to go into, so let's say anything we want to try to lock in for next year and budget for next year, it'd have to be in like FY26, anything, even though we're not going to receive the vehicle for 3 or 4 years. They are going to that, for lack of a better term, secondhand market, which everybody's going to. So now that market's getting backed up because everybody, all these municipalities, not just in our state, but across the country, are trying to save money by trying to think out the box and using all these other options. And yes, we've definitely talked about EV, and it's just with regards to the size of the vehicles, what the vehicles need to be able to do. When you're looking at the fire trucks, it's not as much of an option, but it is something that they think about. So fleet is definitely very interesting. Fleet is something that we need across the board. We need ambulances, and we are past the lifetime for a lot of vehicles across the city, and that isn't safe. That's not safe for people who are driving them. That's not safe for the people who rely on the services that those vehicles have. But yeah, you can get real knee deep in fleet and the amount of money it costs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Next up, we have Megan. We have about 20 more minutes allotted for this item, and if you could keep it to 10 and 10 for discussion, we'd appreciate that.
I've been here before, so it's a little bit of what you want me to talk about. We could do Jeopardy. Do you want to do need for 100, bond scope for 200, cost impacts for 3, or affordability for 1,000? I guess, does anybody have any questions about the need, what the drivers are, why we're even bringing these to the voters, other than we have very aged infrastructure? I can try to go through that quickly if folks do want to hear that part, if they haven't heard it. Okay, I'll try to the voters. We have systems that are very, very, very aged, and we need, in order for current Burlingtonians as well as future Burlingtonians, to make sure that they work. We have numerous systems. There's a sort of a report card on the left-hand side. And even though we have moved some things from the F category to the A category with the money that was authorized in 2018, over 50% of our systems are still sort of scoring at a C- grade or worse. And that's when we look at likelihood of failure and consequence of failure. There's some things that you can tolerate failing, but there's certain things that if they fail, then we end up with permit violations, which turn into beach closures, which turns into what we all experienced in 2018, which is not a thing that I or Burlingtonians want to go through again, where we discharged about 13 million gallons of untreated sewage into the lake because of failed systems. The mayor alluded to this piece. We do still have remaining capacity in some of our wastewater treatment plants, but main plant, our biggest plant, which is also the plant that serves the area of the city that is most likely to experience some of the densification. When we've gone through and we've looked at the state's housing goals, we're programmed to increase or need to increase housing units by about 5,000 housing units. Now, it depends in a wastewater world where those go in, and when we worked with planning and CETO and we started mapping out where we thought those would go, about 3,500 are likely to occur in that main plant sewer shed. And that, unfortunately, is our plant that while we have some remaining capacity, we do not have enough remaining capacity to allow for all of that growth there. And so we are kind of at this crunch point of needing to expand the plant to be able to take that on. There's the climate change resiliency piece, and I have another slide that really talks about the importance of the lake. But even at the basic level, there's safety and code upgrades. The plant was last built or last upgraded in the 1990s. A lot of stuff has changed, and our workers are under really challenging conditions. If anybody's been to a wastewater treatment plant tour, raise your hand. It's some harsh stuff, it's some smelly stuff, there's some gases, and we need to protect our workers because they're really superheroes. So on the lake side, the mayor also alluded to, we've had increases in cyanobacteria blooms. Cindy can attest to this since she took over. I don't remember when you took over, but you've seen the number go up. This isn't due just to Burlington, it's due to a larger watershed issue, but Burlington legally has an obligation to reduce our phosphorus discharge by a certain amount. And the tertiary filter that is part of the scope of work is going to get our phosphorus reduction down to what they call the limits of technology. We're basically going as low as we can go, which the good part is that it knocks our goal out of the park. We're going to be able to hold our heads high, and we're going to be able to look at the rest of the state and said, you know what, we did our part. We turned off the phosphorus faucet. Now we need to make sure the rest of y'all do this as well, because if they don't, I can't guarantee that we're not going to continue to see cyanobacteria blooms, but I'm going to know at the end of the day that we did what we needed to do for our lake. We have a long history of combined sewer overflow reduction. We've done tons and tons of work. There used to be over 170 million gallons of combined sewer overflow that got discharged into the Burlington Harbor. And with the 1990s upgrade, a lot of that was reduced. We do still have combined sewer overflows. The majority of them happen in the south end into the Pine Barge Canal. And there's a slug of money both on the wastewater side and the stormwater side to try to continue chipping away at that long-term goal. I'm gonna probably skip over these, even though it lets me say poop a lot, but I'm gonna skip that. On the drinking water side, anybody who hasn't been to a presentation know what that little house is? The cute house know where it is? Main Street, correct. So it is originally it was the gatehouse for the 7 million gallon reservoir that is up on Main Street. Burlington actually bought the Burlington Aqueduct Company, and that became Burlington Water Works in 1867. And then there's been a period of various projects to expand the reservoir, and then in 1880s they also installed pumps inside that cute little house. And what's important about that, so the reservoir itself is important to the whole city. It is the emergency water supply. When we do projects, planned or unplanned, at the drinking water treatment plant that's on the waterfront just north of the Coast Guard, we have about 24 hours that we can turn off the plant to get things back online because we do have this backup storage. The project that we're proposing to do, which is the vast majority of about 50% of the water bond, is to re-roof and do some site improvements to make sure that reservoir is safe. But the big piece is to rebuild the pump station. That house is from 1867. The floors are cracking. Their systems are also, we have a high percentage of the systems in that pump house that are at nearing failure. And that, actually I should go back to the other slide. That pumping system pumps the water up to the elevated tanks, the big one that's on UVM campus and the small one that's on Redstone campus. and that is what feeds the water supply, the pressure for the hill section. So that section of blue, generally east of Willard Street. And what is in that hill section? The hospital. It's our region's only level 1 trauma center. I cannot let them not have water. That would not be a good day on anybody's list. And so we have to make sure that those pumps are there, ready to work, have adequate redundancy so that that day does not come. So for those of you who remember when I came, I don't remember when it was, December? Who knows? I was presenting a bigger number and a larger scope of work. It was basically everything that you see in yellow, which was involving not just Maine wastewater treatment plant. I'm getting hot in the heater. Maine wastewater treatment plant, but also the stuff that you see over in stage 2, which included a project to consolidate East Plant, which is the plant that's over here on Riverside, and actually bring it over to Main Plant. We're still planning on doing that, but I'll tell you about it in a second. And then also North Plant, which is at the end of North Ave. All 3 plants are old and about to have challenges. But we heard consistently, wow, that number's really big. I think originally the number was like 218. I got it down to 204. I think I got it down to 190. It's a really big number. And the more we thought about it and the more we looked at some of the unknowns, like, hey, we think, and I had this conversation with the state today, and I don't know that we're going to get all this grant money, but we're basically eligible in our Main Plant project, which is about $124 million, for about $40 million worth of grants. If the state had that money. Oh, 3 minutes, God dang it. Anyhow, we worked with the council, with the public, to shrink this initial ask down. That does not mean we are coming back potentially as early as 2027 for those other stage 2 things. So I'm not trying to hide the football. Like, we need all of the money. There's nothing that's off the table. So if you are able to support this initial bond vote, please keep in mind that you're sort of needing to support the next one. I skip that, other than to say that those other projects that are in stage 2 are so important that when I present what is still kind of a scary potential rate projection, those other projects are in here because I know we have to have them. So to the extent that we get grant funding, this should all come down. To the extent that we get people hooking up that we are trying to plan for, this number will come down because we will have more revenue. We are working with the city council to bring back an impact fee so that new development would have to additionally pay into the system that you all have built equity in. But at the end of the day, worst case scenario, as far as we can tell, your water resources bills, so not your taxes, but your water resources bills could increase up to 89% over this 5-year time period. So it's not one big jump. We're going to try to break it up into as many small bites as we can. Want to mention that we already have affordability programs. I think a lot of people don't realize that we have this in place, but basically if you already qualify for other state federal assistance, people just have to show evidence of that qualification, and we use that sort of as a surrogate for income verification so that we can then provide people a discount on their bill. I've been looking into what's the next tranche of support, right? So there's people who get that state federal support, but then there's the next people just above them that might not get any type of support, and we want to make sure that they're not having to choose between paying their water bill on time and buying medicine or buying food. It's not okay. And I think that's the summary. Any questions? Yep.
Yeah, I just have a question about. I'm Kaysen. I'm on the Ward 2 steering committee. I have a question about. So the grant funding that the state has is. I'm just wondering if that's being impacted by like the lack of federal grants that are now like all of them are basically been shut off. But I'm wondering if the state, if that's been impacting the projections of the grant availability.
No, it's just simply that the state has never ponied up enough money to be able to fund a project of this magnitude. This is the biggest project that the state revolving fund has ever seen come through its doors. And so even though I've been testifying at the legislature for the past, I don't know how many years about the fact that this was coming, they continue to put only, I think, like $4 million in the kitty for what are called pollution control grants. I know that we're successful in getting them. We just, for the project that we're starting this year, which is the first part of the wastewater treatment plant project that's focusing on the headworks, which is the initial treatment, we just got a $2.3 million grant towards that project. So we're gonna gobble up all the money. I just don't know that they're gonna have the money that we technically are eligible for. To your other question, we haven't seen major issues with what's going on at the federal level. I hope that stays the case, but I've kind of been emailing once a week and being like, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? And so far, nobody's sounded the alarm. So we might be dodging that particular issue for whatever reason, because we're not electric vehicles, I guess. Yes. See me?
First of all, thank you for all the hard work you've been doing. I've been in a whole bunch of meetings. I know you're out here, as well as the other teams from DPW and parts of the city. This process has been really, really transparent, and I don't mean to be mean or rude or disparage people, but there really is no reason to not understand what is going on and what is needed. We just need a little bit more civic engagement. I did one of the tours. It was very eye-opening, nostril opening.
Fragrant.
Yes, fragrant. The term sticky, I was like, what do you mean by sticky? Well, sometimes it just sticks to your clothes. I was like, no. But aside from that, you could see there were obvious issues that needed repair. There were cracks. There were things that were in real disrepair. And this is our water, right? So what do I think about? I think about affordability. I think about cost. It's scary to think about like one utility bill that's going to go up that much. But the fact of the matter is, if we don't do the work and something happens, it's going to cost even more. And we have examples all over this country of failed water infrastructure. That is not something that we want to deal with at all. So I support this. I support people voting for it, coming out on town meeting day and really showing their state. Your vote is a statement of support for taking the steps toward maintaining our infrastructure in a way that we really haven't done for decades. And that's why so much needs to be done, and it's at such a large cost. We just have to start to catch up on some of this. So I wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I mean, if we are successful on town meeting day, I'm planning on taking that evidence of the community support right to the legislature to be like, we've got a big project, our community supports it, we need the state to step up. Because a lot of what we're doing is not just for us, right? It is for Vermont, the lake, the growth that we're going to be absorbing. So that's the pulpit that I've been on. Yeah.
So the two peripheral wastewater treatment facilities, those were going to be consolidated, and that was part of the Perkins Pier expansion.
So
originally?
only East Plant, the one that's on Riverside,
Right.
will be turned into a pump station, and then there'll be a force main on Riverside, and then there will be a new gravity system because the existing gravity system is too small. So we would be upsizing pipes. However it is, we would run it through the old North End. And then currently, because there's another project that's going on to update Cherry Street, we think that's going to be the best alignment to get it through downtown and then to Battery and then to Main Plant. So then your question is, yes, part of this work will be expanding the current footprint of Main Plant into Perkins Pier because we don't have enough space to do what we need to do. And what's really interesting is that Perkins Pier, technically wastewater bought it. I can't remember what year. And then in the 60s. No, I think it was in the 80s. So in the 80s before we did the last upgrade, I think the plan was that they were going to use Perkins Pier for a giant storage tank to address the CSO stuff, and then they were able to figure out a different way to deal with it in that moment. But anyhow, there's an MOU that basically says if wastewater needs it back for wastewater purposes, then we're able to take back. We're not taking the whole thing back. We've been working with Cindy's team to try to right size and squeeze it as tight as we can to the rest of main plant so that we're not impacting that site more than we need to.
So without this bond, then we don't get that improvement, and we're sort of going to end up having to take out a high-price loan when it fails?
Yeah, going for a high price loan or basically paying for, if something fails, I'm going to have to pay for it. Just like when the Winooski River siphon failed. We fortunately had enough cash on hand to go ahead and make all of those emergency costs and spend $2.3 million. In that case, we knew FEMA money was coming. But like, if something breaks, I'm going to have to pay for it, and I don't know that I can go after the fact to get a quick loan. They do sometimes have emergency SRF loans, so I suppose I could look into that. I don't know if I'm answering your question. We're going to have to pay for it somehow, and it's going to be emergency.
Cheaper to do it through a bond rather than wait to a major failure?
Absolutely.
We have to scrape, beg, and borrow for money?
Yes, absolutely. And in some cases, the lead time on equipment, like even this project that we're about to start, it's like 9 months. So you can't get the piece of equipment that just failed, and like that freaks me out more than anything when you look at things that could fail. And we've, in the past, we've had some really talented MacGyvers essentially who could virtually fix, weld, duct tape, anything, and those people have retired. And while we have very talented staff, we also shouldn't be asking people to just Band-Aid after Band-Aid after Band-Aid. It's not a place that people want to work. Go to the website. There's tons of materials. Have dinner parties. Talk to your friends so that they know that there's materials. I'm not saying what you need to do, but I want you to show up and vote and, consider all of these things. And also, all of these bonds are important, right? The last thing I want is for people to pick and choose, because the success of the city and the general fund relies on the water and vice versa. So it's really a big package for the success of the city, to consider these items. So thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Ashley. And thank you to the mayor. Next up, we have the Burlington School District budget. Jeannie's here, and I believe Polly will be joining online. Yes.
Hi, Polly.
Hi, Jeannie. Hi, everybody.
Polly, it's not you. So your voice was too loud, but it's not you. You want to do another test run? Say hello, Polly, please.
Hi.
Great. Sounds much better. So we were here last month, and we went over the budget. So I hope this isn't too redundant. But, I forgot my phone. Sorry.
I'll be right back.
Charlie reminded me that We should introduce ourselves. Sorry. I'm Jeannie Waltz. I am the District Central Commissioner, which is Ward 2 and 3, also known as the Old North End. Polly?
Hi, I'm Polly Vanderputten, and I'm the Ward 2 School Commissioner.
The district, school board members, everybody who cares about these things do not have a say in what it actually says. I'm going to read it. Sorry, gosh, I have way too much work going on these Google Docs. Hold on. Questions, okay. On the ballot, it says, shall the voters of the school district approve the school board to expend $134,779,831, I'm probably saying it wrong, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. Burlington School District estimates that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in per pupil education spending of $14,825.77, which is 6.74% higher than spending for the current year. And it's a yes or no question. Okay? What you all need to know is that this ask is estimated to result in a 4% decrease from what we are currently paying. So I am here to say, just say yes. Polly, it's your turn.
Well, so there are a lot of factors going into this, but I think it's important for us to stress that we are looking at a 4% property tax decrease, and to emphasize that word.
Oh my God. Did I say increase?
No.
Oh, good.
I just want to say decrease again, because Burlington has been really supportive of schools, like not only passing school budgets, but also for us to get the bond to build the new high school and tech center, which is happening. Like, we have yet to see a report that says, nope, not on target, not on track. Like, that to me is a real point of pride. Every time I go past Institute Road, I think this is taxpayer dollars at work right now, building this building. So to be able to do that, we still have this bond, but we don't have nearly as much pressure this year from the bond. And to have a 4% property tax decrease, which means for the average taxpayer, a savings of $238. I think that, yes, as Jeannie said, please vote yes on this yes or no question, because Burlington has worked really, really hard for years to be true to our students and our staff and our families, and to also keep things reasonable, which has been hard when you're trying to steward all of that money for all those people. And to say the word decrease this year is so novel that I keep saying it. Back over to you, Jeannie.
I graduated from high school in 1985, so to just say yes. Does anybody remember the Nancy Reagan thing? Okay. Yeah, it was. If I know that we went through the different aspects of the budget, what went into it, the process. I don't know if I want to repeat all of that. But if anybody has any questions, or if anybody wants me to go into some of the bells and whistles that are important, yes, Ben.
Thank you. I don't need to get all the details, but I haven't really wrapped my head around this yet. And so, great, 6.7% more spending per pupil, 4% less spending all over. So what's your magic?
The magic really is probably about 5 years of work that was spearheaded by your school board members, myself included, in forming a coalition with other school board members in the state to fight for a change or an update of how the pupil weights are actually weighted, the percentages attached to different demographics and their needs, and because of those needs, what it costs to educate them. So for over 20 years, we were not receiving enough money from the state to equitably educate our students. And through advocacy, hiring a lobbyist, all that fun stuff, a law was put into place that has changed those weights, and Burlington is finally receiving financial support from on the state level. So when, all those years when we didn't get enough money from the state, we didn't fix the buildings, for one thing, because we had to educate the students. Of course, we want to educate the students, but it's also a law, right? You have to put the kids first, in addition to you want to put the kids first. So for over 20 years, we were asking taxpayers to supplement what we weren't getting, what wasn't enough. We know what we need to educate our kids. This is what we got from the state. Now we go to our community and say, give us a little bit more because we need a little bit more this time around. And yeah, this is going down. So can you imagine how better off we would have been if 20 years, all those years? Yeah. So, oh gosh, I don't want to get too off track. I was going to say, pretty much that is why we're looking at this budget and there's a huge sigh of relief, right? That's one of the things. Also, well, go ahead, Patrick.
How much of that percentage, 4%, going down is actually because of lack of student enrollment, because of lack of people moving in,
well,
and not filling positions because student enrollment's going down?
Less students means less money from the state, though. So I'm not sure, right? It's per pupil. So, yeah, less, yeah.
If I can jump in, sorry, to also add to your answer, there has been effort over the past few years to make sure that our staffing aligns with our enrollment. So there have definitely been what they call RIFs, which means reduction in force. So for example, if you have 2 fourth grade classrooms in an elementary school, and then 3 fifth grade teachers, there have been efforts made to say, this does not match our enrollment, so we are going to reduce the number of fifth grade teachers we have because we really only need 2 classrooms worth. And I think what's important about that is that the superintendent and cabinet have been really mindful of doing that each year rather than having this cumulative effect, which really negatively impacts staff. To say, okay, what is our enrollment? What are we looking at right now? We're in a really interesting place, I think, in Burlington with our schools and this sort of statewide sense of a decline in enrollment, but that's not necessarily 100% true in Burlington. And the sense of it is when we get this new high school and tech center, along with some new housing, which is projected to be built in the next couple of years, we are probably going to see another bump. So when they talk about decline in enrollment, that is somewhat true for Burlington, but it's a bit qualified. I guess that's how I would phrase it, that we also have families who are not necessarily looking for a 3-bedroom house on a certain amount of square footage. They're okay with living in somewhat smaller circumstances to be able to be in Burlington and access our schools. So somewhat of a decline in enrollment, which the district has been
Okay. My question might be for the future, but you're saying that the state is now paying us what we should per pupil, and that is really great. And this all might change very quickly with the state's new proposal for education. Is that going to help us or hurt us? Or are you just going to think about that later?
Well, I just want to say that's part of why I'm running again, is because all of this was such a huge accomplishment. It's called Act 127. It was such a huge accomplishment. And it really was a move towards equitable funding. So now that it's on the chopping block again, it's really upsetting. But there are two sets of weights being proposed right now at the state level. There's one set coming from Picus and Odin. Is that the name of the... Anyway, it's just bunk. If you guys want to look it up, or if anybody wants me to send them articles about stuff, I will. These numbers are not taking into consideration a lot of different things. Very, very un-Vermonter type stuff going on. But on the other hand, there's another set of weights that is coming from people who were involved with the original study that studied the data, like made actual scientific, I guess you would say, analytical, I don't know what the word is. The thing where it's for real, whatever that thing is, what we have in place right now. So there is at least there's a voice of reason somewhere in there. I don't know if it's being heard, but just the idea that all of this is being revisited in the second year that it's been implemented. And by the way, there's an on-ramp and off-ramp for districts. So the districts that have become very accustomed to privilege, obviously, were bracing for this and not doing so well. Shockingly, they also didn't pass a lot of their school budgets, right? So even though it's their turn to kind of buckle down, and there's no irrational things being asked of them. This is not drastic. In fact, it has been the rollout of this whole change it's got its cushion, it's got its guardrails. Of course, it's being disputed, and that I believe that is influencing this huge state level change from Governor Scott that we're seeing. If anybody wants to ask me questions about that, I'm very much up to date.
So, Governor Scott doesn't like Burlington.
There's no kidding.
He really doesn't. And I was reading something somebody posted, and they said, you have never seen a picture of Governor Scott having fun in Burlington.
Does he actually go outside of Montpelier?
It's a serious issue. You know, we're the quote unquote Queen City. We're in a state that still has an over-reliance on tourism. And so tourism is important here, important for the rest of the state. We're an economic driver, and he doesn't care. So to have these new weights, I think we need to, I would love the two of you to think of like a call to action. We really need to educate people, and Burlingtonians need to get together, and we need to be reaching out to all the representatives. And I know equity is a dirty word, but it's important because some of our kids have suffered because of this. Yeah. It's affected how they can move through life. It's affected especially jobs that they could qualify for, experiences in life that they could have. It's been a real lack of equity, and that is just not something he cares about. And we know our legislature has gotten more conservative. So I don't feel like we should sit by and do nothing. I really feel there needs to be some sort of education coming from our school commissioners and the superintendent's office, and I really think we need to be doing some sort of call to action so that Burlingtonians are really invested in trying to keep this waiting that we waited for so long, and just get ready to protect ourselves at all sorts of levels,
Yep.
So thank you.
I will definitely give you more updates about that. So let me think about this. We're just not at a point where there's a real decision going to be made. So it's still in the findings. Actually, they're still introducing what's happening, what the proposals are. This is, for example, just last week there was a meeting with the education committee about how the governance structure of the proposal would be, what the proposal is. And the committee members were just getting a hard copy of that information. It hadn't been sent it via email either at the committee meeting. So how are they going to formulate opinions, much less ask questions or dispute anything or even make good suggestions about how to move something forward? They had no information. It's really hard to tell. Is this kind of purposely being withheld because information is, knowledge is power, right? Or is the AOE and the entities preparing all these proposals, are they still trying to figure out the details? Like they don't actually know? Are they? It's probably a little bit of both, right? But so that's unfortunate because we're already about a quarter of the way through the session. So there isn't a big decision-making thing happening yet because people are still learning what it is that they're even going to be deciding on. But for sure, if there's an action, I'm probably going to call you first, Milo. You got some connections from what I hear.
Just one last quick question. Is this change in weighting part of the same education plan that the government proposed, which includes consolidation and some other efficiencies, or is it a separate thing?
The change that recently happened is benefiting us right now for the second year, and the governor's proposal would change that. Yes. Yeah. It is, there's many components to the bigger plan,
I would just like to add that a lot of the mainstream news media are calling the governor's plan for education, like with the 5 districts or whatever.
Yeah.
They're calling it a concept. They're not calling it a finished plan. So I'm not sure. I agree. It's kind of alarming that it hasn't moved further at this point in the session, but it's most people are calling it a concept, not an actual plan.
Concept?
It is very conceptual at this point. They haven't provided details about, for example, having 5 districts. The average number of students per district would be 15,000, except for the one that we would be in, which would have 34,000. Like why you have one with 34,000 and then the 4 others with 15,000, that has not been explained. How they would have a 5-member school board for each of the districts, where right now, for example, Burlington has a 12-member school board, and it feels like just that alone is manageable work. It's work, but it's manageable work. I don't know what they're thinking about that. I don't know how they could possibly ascertain the needs of students ranging from the Swanton, St. Albans area into Chittenden County, where we have Burlington and Winooski and Colchester, down into Addison County. Like, I just keep thinking, Vermont is, for lack of a better comparison, it's a lot like France in terms of this identity thing, like our local identity. And that's very important to people in terms of how they determine their school budget. So France has like 300 different kinds of cheese. We have this identity of our different towns and what matters to us, and this desire as a state to fund equitably and to think about how it does cost more to educate a multilanguage learner, because we need to have multilanguage translators on staff all the time. We need to have social workers. We need to have, for our special ed students, a high number of special educators. You know, like, there are all these factors that go into it, but then we still have our local identity. And I just don't know. I haven't seen anything yet from the governor or Zoe Saunders that says, here's how we have figured out to make everything right, except for their fallback of school choice. They're like, okay, everyone gets assigned a school, but then everyone gets to choose the school they want to go to, which I fear is going to lead to some tremendous inequities. So, TBD on that. We live in a very interesting, strange kind of limbo. We are year to year with our budget, so this is what we know. We are looking at a slight increase because we do need to maintain our staffing levels and what we're providing to our students, but then also a 4% property tax decrease for this year. How this pertains to what goes on with this current concept, as you say, coming out from the state, I don't know. We don't know. I'm focused right now on just passing the budget to get through one more year, and that's kind of my mindset.
Yep. I think that's it. Good.
Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you, Polly. Next, we have Milo. Was Gene gonna join? Do you know? Is he? Oh, cool. Gene is online. Okay. And we're gonna be talking about the charter changes. We're hoping maybe 5 minutes per item and 15 for questions, however you see fit.
Thank you. It might not even take that long because we did talk about these last month, and I feel like the bond items were needed more heavy lifting due to the detail of those. I will start with the charter change where guns would be banned where alcohol is sold. Something that has come up in the past, something that has been an issue for Burlington and other municipalities in the state of Vermont, where the data shows that we have issues of gunfire incidents having origins in or around bars. This is something that's been done in other states, including quote-unquote red states. I support this because it's going to put all the downtown businesses on an even keel. As a business, you can put up a sign and you can say no guns allowed. But we have some of the loosest gun laws in the state, and it makes it hard for our bar owners to really be able to enforce that. It would be helpful to them to have this so that they can do enforcement, and the enforcement can be consistent throughout our city. So I hope people will be on board for that. And then Jean, do you have anything to say about?
Sure. And just so everybody knows, I cannot generally hear when people are talking in the audience. So, just keep that in mind. It's just the thing that I think Charlie couldn't work through. The one point to add is that the ballot item is exactly what was passed by voters in 2014 after the series of horrific mass shootings. And so we passed that with about 70% of the vote. It has languished in the State House. We have asked our legislators consistently to bring it back up. And what they have advised us this year is that we should be bringing back and getting a reaffirmation if there is one. I think that, from my perspective, guns and alcohol don't mix, and nothing good happens when people are drinking. And we saw that this last summer as just an example of that. So a reaffirmation, which is strong, I think will let the legislators know that this is important, and it's particularly important in Burlington, where we did have a homicide as a result of the confluence of guns and alcohol in a bar. Thanks.
Thank you. One of the other items has to do with redistricting in terms of how it has to be signed off by other municipalities in the state. And it's basically, in a nutshell, saying that we don't want that. Why should other places have a say in how our city redistricts our wards? We wouldn't necessarily want to have a say in how Rutland or St. Albans or, and they wouldn't necessarily want, to hear from us anyway. So it's just more or less giving us the power to do our own redistricting without having to have it approved by others in the legislature.
Yeah, the other thing is that this is the standard in a number of other towns, including Montpelier. So I think this will make our lives a whole lot easier and give us the ability to do a redistricting, which is a hard thing to do, and it's based on the census data. In timely fashions and in a way that is just reflective of the voters. Thanks.
Thank you. And the third one is allowing for increasing time required to give rent increase notification. And I believe it also includes changes in the terms of leases as well. Is that correct, Jean? You worked on this.
Yeah.
And also
both notices for terminating residential tenancies or lease terms and rent increases. And we have got right now an ordinance that's authorized by our charter, but it is very specific. It's like 90 or 120 days. And it is very clear from the experience of people trying to find housing that is just not adequate and is needing to be adjusted, but we have to do charter changes to adjust them. And so this will allow us by ordinance to meet the needs that are reflective of the time. And right now the ordinances, so if this would pass and get approved by the legislature and the governor, then we have an ordinance right now that still stays in effect. So it's not like you just throw everything out open and it goes to the state law. We still will have that. So the current situation will continue until it is changed by the city council. And then again, this brings the decision much closer to the people and particularly the people who are being affected by it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would say, as was mentioned earlier, ballots have been mailed. So you'll actually get to see your ballot, what it looks like. If you need more, like on the ballot is the language that you have to vote yes or no to. But for those policy and ordinance nerds out there, if you actually want to see the whole thing, that's available to you when you go to the City of Burlington's website. Click on Departments, Clerk Treasurer's Office, and then Elections. So all the information that you need about elections. In our district, wards 2 and 3, we have a large percentage of renters. A lot of people move around. Maybe you need to register your new address. If you don't get your ballot in time, you're like, oh, did I move since I last voted? If you did, there's all kinds of links to update that information. There's links to go to the state's website to verify your registration, so it'll tell you exactly what is on record for you. There is a reminder of the voting times and then link to all the ballot question info, and then a reminder of voter eligibility, especially for our residents who are not quote unquote citizens but are here legally and can now vote in local elections. So that is a reminder as well. It'd be great to have more of our residents vote in our district, which traditionally has very low turnout. I'm not going to say I'm sad I don't have an opponent, but that's not a reason for people not to vote, because we have really important things that we need to stand up for and show that our community supports that. So having said that, we can use the rest of our time for questions on these ordinance items or anything else you might want from me and Jean.
So since we were talking about voting, let me just say that as a voting official, if people do use the mail-in option and you make a mistake, so in other words, you vote for three people for president of the United States instead of one, City Hall can still correct that. They might contact you and say, would you like to correct your ballot? And if you do all this early enough, you can do that back and forth through the mail. But if you wait until the last minute and you make a mistake on your ballot, you're not going to be able to correct it. So that's one good reason to actually walk into a polling place and vote, because they'll catch it there and then they'll instantaneously allow you to correct your ballot. They'll give you a new ballot. So that's one advantage of voting in person. Thank you. Excuse me? So,
yes, Ward 2 will be voting at the community center. Yep. And then Ward 3 at the Sustainability Academy.
I have one question. Meow.
Let me tell you. I feel a certain way about this, and maybe I shouldn't, but it's just, so there are other good things. Like there's things in there I don't disagree with, right? We're all talking about what came out of the dog task force and how cats got mentioned. I'm like, yeah, we should license our cats. If you're a cat owner, you should license your cat. And there's other things, but the leashing of cats right now, in general, I have problems with anything. I understand that there's a mindset that, hey, we should have laws in the books. Even if we can't enforce them, we should have laws in the books. I'm just right now, with the way things are, I am against putting any new ordinances that would lead to enforcement that is non-existent at this time, because we all know that there's a lot of things that we need enforced that aren't getting enforced right now. Does that mean we don't do it later? Maybe we could, but then we got to give a heads up to everyone who's got little tabbies that like to be outside, because you're not going to just change that overnight. And I think that's something if we want to do that in the future. But I think just right now, the whole idea of leashing and just saying, okay, this is something that can be enforced. We're not properly fully dealing with the leashing issues or lack thereof for dogs. And we've had issues with dogs for a while. I just, it drives me crazy. From a community safety standpoint, it drives me crazy. It's like, ticketing people for using the bathroom outside when they don't have a place to live. Yeah, you're going to ticket them. You're going to fine them. That's going to be effective, right? Who's going to do that? We don't have that level of enforcement. And plus, that's just cruel. And we don't have public bathrooms. And it's a whole list of other things. But, yeah, leashing. Would you like to say anything about that, Jean?
We are still working through this in the ordinance committee. I have raised the practicality issues, and I'm trying to figure out ways that, like with even licensing, considering how difficult it is to get dogs licensed in town. There are some ideas that I've put forward. I have not quite gotten the affirmation and support that I would have thought my colleagues Joan and Becca should have given. So but we'll see. Right now, we are not going to deal with this until March, just based on the timing of the next meeting, and there is another item that we've got to deal with. So then we will be picking it up. Hard to say what will come out. Personally, I think that even licensure, which can make some sense, needs to be done in an administratively effective way, because it makes absolutely no sense to require people to license cats and not have mechanisms to deal with that. And we don't really, in fact, and we should be dealing with the dog. So there's going to be more conversation on it, and it's a joy to get all of the emails and the front porch forums on them, including yours, Patrick. So I think it's important. Clearly, there are a lot of people on both sides, and so I am not inclined to just dismiss the feelings of either one, regardless of my own personal opinions on that. So that's sort of how I'm trying to figure out how to go about it. But I'm not supportive of doing anything that is just performative. I mean, if you're going to license it, you got to make sure that it's going to have licensing. You got to make sure that you've got a system in place to do it, because otherwise you're just sort of like showing a flag and not doing anything to stand behind it.
I think that's a really important point, because we keep seeing these things. We're having these really, just to me, silly waste of time arguments on council of these ideas that are, if we don't want to use the word performative, let's think of it in terms of premature. You're trying to bring forth ideas that we in the city we don't have the capacity to do. In some cases, we don't have sufficient bodies to do certain enforcement. We don't have, as Jean just said, in place to be able to do the extra licensing. We just don't have. I've been something that got voted on was a public safety kiosk on Church Street, and I've been talking to various stakeholders, and the general thing is, well, yeah, it could be a good idea, but not really right now. And then people are like, oh, well, there'll be a police officer station there. It's like, no, there will not be a police officer station there. And we cannot promise for the foreseeable future that there will be, because we already know it's going to take years to build back the department. So we can't promise that, and we shouldn't be promising that. I am very deeply concerned that these votes that are being forced through, it's like it's like making false promises to people. It's like, oh, we voted to get rid of the cap, and now it's a new day. And look, if voting to get rid of the cap makes some people feel better, so be it. But it's just a gesture, and no matter how meaningful, and I keep saying this, no matter how meaningful a gesture it is, it's not a plan. And we're not doing the basic ABC 1, 2, 3 for recruitment. I mean, I'm talking about we are not properly advertising the positions. And people can't get their head wrapped around that. How are we not properly advertising the positions? You would think that is the one thing that we are doing. And it's not. And that's what I've been trying to bring attention to. So I'm really disappointed in these votes to, having an argument Monday about, wanting to put more money into the housing trust fund, and then someone saying, well, let's make sure that, we can't have any increase in administrative costs. It's like we're trying to say we want a heck of a lot more money in that fund because we are all in agreement that we do not have enough affordable housing. We don't have enough housing units, period. We don't have enough affordable housing. And then the term affordable, what is that really, right? Because the truth is we don't have enough low-cost affordable housing. And if we don't know what's going on at the federal level, so we're going to have to be looking for money in other places, and someone has to do that work. And if they're going to do that work, they deserve to be paid for doing that work, but you don't want any increase in administrative costs. So you're really saying you don't want that work to be done to increase the money. It's a stupid argument. I'm like, why? So, so I just would love for people to email more. When you see things that you don't like, it's important that your voices be heard and that you give an opinion on it. And also to have your neighbors in other wards, friends, family, in other wards where they have a choice to make a difference, so that we can give our full support to the mayor and to workable solutions. A couple of these elections are really, really important. Thank you.
I was just thinking about the back on the cat issue. I think, and with dogs too, I think could it be that the solution isn't really an ordinance at all, but just a lot more publicity about what it means to be a responsible pet owner, and just like, because even if you have an ordinance, you're going to need that anyway, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so.
Yep. Agreed.
I have a similar comment, but related to one of the charter changes. So thank you so much for talking about the charter changes that are coming up on the ballot, and related to the charter change that would authorize the city council to make changes to the notice periods for terminations and rent increases. I think it's really important that we look at the current housing crisis and find solutions that work for everyone, and especially for the most vulnerable in our community. And I would also encourage, if it does get passed at the city level, and then if the legislature authorizes the charter change, and then when it comes back to the city, and when the ordinance committee is creating these ordinances, that I would encourage us to think about outreach as well, because a law is only as good as people's knowledge about it and enforcement. And even now, we have there are so many people who don't fully understand their rights and responsibilities as tenants, and so many landlords who don't understand their rights and responsibility as landlords. And so for any change to anything related to the rental ordinance, I would love to see some either required or incentivized education for landlords to provide them with the information that they need to know what their responsibilities and their rights are, and equally outreach and education for renters so that they understand that as well. The other thing I wanted to just bring to folks' attention about the charter change, and although I'm absolutely in support of anything that increases the rights of tenants. You know, I work at CVOEO. We support tenants' rights. We have a hotline for tenants where any renter can call and get questions about their lease or about habitability or terminations answered. You know, I do work in anti-discrimination and affordable housing. And I also have a concern about a little piece of the charter change, which would set different rental periods for vulnerable populations. And so it's really important that we provide equity and ensure that our most vulnerable populations, and especially people who are traditionally subject to discrimination and exclusion, have equitable access to information and resources. And so I think it makes total sense to do something more. However, if there are two different rental periods for two different two different notification requirements for different groups of people, it's going to be really confusing. It's going to be confusing for tenants. It's going to be confusing for landlords. And then there's also the question of what sort of certification might be required. So all of this could easily be addressed through proper education for tenants, proper education for landlords. So whatever gets approved, whatever gets developed, I would just really encourage the city to think about creative ways to get that information into people's hands. So, thank you.
Thank you. I think I really feel that there's just a lot more that we can do to get information to people in general. People do not like watching meetings. And I understand, because sometimes, like, I sit in a 7-hour city council meeting and I'm glazing over. It's something I really want to think about this term, because I always felt that I would be able to do a lot more community engagement. Like, I talk to people all the time. I talk to people almost every day, but I need to talk to more people at once. So how do we do that? I mean, social media, I think the progressives, we've been doing a really good job on social media, trying to keep people informed about what's happening in meetings, what's coming up in meetings. But there needs to be a better way to get people to be engaged, especially with everything that we have going on. Like, we all have that feeling, right? We don't want to watch the news. It doesn't make us feel good. It doesn't, but we need to be more aware than ever right now, even in our own city, even locally. So yeah, I'll be talking about those. I don't know, do we do a DJ party? Like an afternoon DJ party, like not something in the evening, maybe like a 3 to 6, and then we like stop in the middle and we just start to talk about stuff in our community. These are things I think about. So let me know what you think. Anything else, Jim?
I mean, just in terms of what Jess was talking about, I think that a passage of this will also give us the opportunity to look at the rest of the housing code. And so we have got, for example, in the noise ordinance, a requirement that landlords provide information about the noise ordinance. Clearly the community safety issues have evolved, because that was like one of the big ones, 20 years ago, in terms of noise violations, particularly with college students. But the whole question of providing people with notice about their rights is something that we actually do have the authority to do. So I guess this is an invitation to Jess and to other advocates and folks who are actually doing this work on a daily basis to reach out to us, to reach out to me, to have some conversations about the existing law. We've got a couple of things from a legal aid attorney, and an idea in terms of an information registry or a portal that I think would be helpful, that we're trying to vet through the administration. So these things, I think, this charter change does allow us to look at it in a really broad way, and it's an opportunity for us to look at what we can do, even if we don't need a charter change to do it. So I guess this is an invitation to have a further conversation outside of this context, and for folks to reach out and see if we can get maybe a working group or something like that to draft some to draft some changes to the existing laws. Now would be a good time, because we've got a rental the rental registration comes up in April. April 1st is when landlords need to have re-registered their units. So it may be a little bit late in terms of that, but not necessarily, and we could look to make some changes there. Thanks.
Any other last minute questions as we are just a couple of minutes to go? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Milo. Thank you, Gene. Thank you, Mark, Roy, the Richard Kemp Center, for hosting us, all of you. Yes, there won't be a raffle this month, but there will be next month. Apologies.
Instead of a raffle, we have to-go containers, so everybody wins.
Everybody wins.
There's some already packed up by the door.
Okay, so actually it's not a raffle, it's actually a door prize. So you don't have to invest anything.
Thank you, Travis. Thank you, Shawnee.